So, hello YouTube and Facebook. This is UngarToTheMax here, coming at you with another video. So, I know that in the past I have hit you over the head many times about how I've complained about the NBA removing its digital content. And apparently it's not just from iTunes, because I try to satisfy my needs by going on Amazon Prime to see if the games were available there. But no, they were not available. So, I'm stuck only watching highlights. Whatever. Maybe at some point the NBA will put their live digital content back up. We'll have to wait and see. But maybe I've said this, maybe I haven't. But the reason I enjoy going back and purchasing these old games, like Game 2 of the Eastern Conference semifinals between the Atlanta Hawks and the Cleveland Cavaliers from the 2016 NBA playoffs, is because I like to tell the story of how a team started from round one, game one, and made it all the way to winning the championship, whether that's the Pittsburgh Penguins in 2017 or the Chicago Cubs when they came back from a 3-1 deficit to beat the Cleveland Indians, which is funny because I'm wearing a Cleveland Indian shirt. But I just like to tell that story. And unfortunately, I don't get to see the full story for the Cavaliers from their 2016 season because the NBA took down their digital games and videos. Now, part of this is on me because I should have taken advantage of the opportunity to purchase these games while they were available. But, everybody makes mistakes, and it is what it is. But the other reason I wanted to make this video and record live on Facebook is because I want to talk about expansion and team relocations. Because in the past, I've said in videos before that in no situation am I okay with one team losing a city let me say that again. In no situation am I okay with a city losing a team for another city to gain that team. And there are two particular situations where that is true for me especially. Number one, the Seattle SuperSonics. Ever since I started my YouTube channel, bringing the Octagon back to Cleveland after UFC 203 and bringing the NBA back to Seattle have been two of my main goals. Now I know I'm just a little YouTube channel with 263 subscribers. We're almost to 300. Let's get there. We can do it. And I know I'm just a small YouTube channel with not even 500 subscribers. Making videos, expressing my opinions about sports topics. What can I do? But every little voice helps. So, because think about this, okay? And I'll get back to the main concept of Seattle in 1 second. But this actually ties into Seattle, and here's how, okay? The Sacramento Kings were bought by a small group of people in Seattle who wanted to move them back to the city of Seattle and rename them the SuperSonics because the Sonics were taken out of Seattle by Clay Bennett and his Oklahoma City-based group because Howard Schultz was an idiot and thought, oh, I'm going to sell them to Clay Bennett even though he's based in Oklahoma City. He'll keep the team in Seattle. Yeah, right. That was doomed from the start. So Howard Schultz, I hate you. That's part of the reason why I don't buy Starbucks products, is because he was the former owner of Starbucks, and like I said, he owned the Seattle SuperSonics. But what happened? He sold the team, and now they're not around. Anyway, back to Sacramento for a second. So a group in Seattle tried to buy the Kings and move them to Seattle. However, Kings fans came out in rallies and were going, "Save our Kings! Save our Kings! Save our Kings!" all over town. And guess what? The Kings got a new arena, Golden One Center in downtown Sacramento, and they're still around. However, Seattle tried to do the same thing when this whole Oklahoma City thing was happening. You had fans all over the city rallying, going, "Save our Sonics! Save our Sonics! Save our Sonics!" But guess what? That didn't change anything. The Sonics are not around. And my dad, I also explained this. I have a lifetime goal to see a game at all 30 NBA teams' arenas. I think I'm up to around 22. My dad and I were actually supposed to go to Memphis for a big game, actually. When we got the tickets originally, I didn't think it was going to be a big game. I just thought, okay, it's a Grizzlies home game against the Utah Jazz, whatever. Or not the Utah Jazz, it was against Oklahoma City. However, the Grizzlies actually surprised, and they got into playoff positioning. I think they were in 8th place. In OKC, everybody thought, oh, they traded Russell Westbrook. They don't have anybody. No, somehow they got up to the number 5 spot in the playoffs. So it was actually a playoff battle. Not a potential playoff preview, but still, it probably would have been a playoff level matchup. But of course, coronavirus had other ideas. So we'll see when I get to go to another NBA game, or an NHL game, or an MLB game, or just any sports event in general. We got sports back a little bit with NASCAR and UFC. And the NHL Players Association approved a 2014 bracket last night. Now, that doesn't guarantee we're getting hockey back for sure, but the playoff structure is in place for if hockey comes back. Anyway, getting a little off topic. Back to Seattle. So, like I said, there were rallies all over the city of Seattle going, "Save our Sonics! Save our Sonics!" But again, it didn't help. So I don't get what the difference is. Sacramento did the same type of thing, like I said earlier, and the Kings are still around. They're playing in this beautiful new arena, the Golden One Center in downtown Sacramento. But when Seattle tried to do the same thing, it didn't matter. They still packed up and left to go to Oklahoma City. And it really bothers me because when I made this lifetime goal to see a game at all 30 NBA teams' arenas, Seattle was one of those teams I really wanted to see. Because I've heard, like, Seattle fans are some of the most passionate fans I've ever seen, especially Seahawks fans. Mariners fans, when their team is good, they show up and they make noise. But when their team is not good, But I've noticed that actually with a lot of fan bases, transitioning to the next topic, coincidentally. When I go to a game, whether it's a Cavs game or, another team's arena, whatever, I've noticed that a majority of those, for a majority of those games, and I'll talk about the exception in 1 second. That's why this one exception is my favorite atmosphere I've been to. The fans don't really get into the game until like the fourth quarter. Even if it's a great game for the first 3 quarters, like it could be a tight 10. Yes, I would say a 10-point game is a tight game because, 10 points could either swing to become a 20-point lead, or a 10-point game could easily shrink and the team that had the 10-point lead could lose their lead. I know that was a little bit confusing and wordy, but at the same time, I hope it makes sense. Let me know in the comments section on Facebook if it does not make sense, and I'll try and clarify it. Seriously, say something if it's confusing. But a 10-point lead for me is like a pendulum swing. You can either lose the lead or gain the lead. Quite easily, too. So, I remember where I was going. Lost my place a little bit. What I've noticed is, even if it's a close game, let's say 10 points or maybe even 8 points, whatever, the fan base doesn't really get into the game until the fourth quarter. And I'm like, what? Where were you guys the first 3 quarters? Like, you're here, but were you like sleeping or something? Like, I don't get it. Now, the one exception to that rule, or I shouldn't call it a rule, to that statement, there we go, would be when my dad and I went up to Toronto to see the Raptors play against the Utah Jazz. Throughout that game, Raptors fans were into it. They were going, "Let's go Raptors! Let's go Raptors!" And that's why that game was my favorite atmosphere I've seen so far. Raptors fans were into it the whole game. Even when the team was trailing against Utah, the fans were still into it, and it seemed to energize the Raptors. Of course, and Toronto would go on to win that game. I don't remember the exact score off the top of my head. I probably could look it up, although I don't remember what year it was from. Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head. Anyway, so, which brings me to my next point. And I will be discussing this in my video collaboration with my fellow NFL fan, although he's a Carolina Panthers fan because he lives in Charlotte. His name's Joe Harbesovich. I will be bringing him onto the show at some point. Still have to schedule when that's going to be. But one thing I want to discuss with him is, if you're the team winning a series, or you have the lead in the championship, whatever, do you want to be at home to close out that series and win the championship, or is it better to win it on the road? Because think about this. The Washington Nationals won the World Series in Houston. Actually, during the 2019 World Series, and it's funny because my friend Adam Baldessari is watching this. Shout out to you. Apparently he's a big Nationals fan, although I get confused sometimes. What was it? Oh yeah, no home team won any of the games in the World Series last season. None of them. But the first 2 games were in Houston, right? But the Astros lost both games to Washington. Games 3 and 4 were in Washington. Guess what? Houston won both of those. Game 5 Game 5 was also in Washington. I'm sorry. Houston won that. Games 6 and 7, both in Houston. Washington won those. and thus they are your World Series champions. Go to the Stanley Cup Final. Boston had home ice advantage. All right, let me take you through this. Boston won Game 1. Okay, St. Louis won Game 2, and then Games 3 and 4 were both in St. Louis. Boston hammered the Blues in Game 3. I believe the final score was like 7-2 or something. Game 4, Blues come back and win it, getting their first ever home ice win in the Stanley Cup Final. Game 5, back in Boston. But guess what? St. Louis won. That was thanks in large part to a no call by the refs on what should have been a tripping penalty. But the refs always make controversial calls or no calls. Think about the 2018 NFC Championship. I think the referee was blind. Just saying. Hope if you haven't been living under a rock, you'll know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so oh shoot, I forget. Sometimes when I'm talking like this, I lose a little bit of track of where I'm going. Let me think. Oh, I remember. Okay, Game 6 back in St. Louis, the Blues had an opportunity to close out the series and win the Stanley Cup at Enterprise Center in front of their home fans. Unfortunately, for the Blues and myself, because I am a huge St. Louis Blues fan, the Bruins came in and said, no. You're not winning the cup on your home ice. If you want to win the cup, you're going to have to win it on our home ice, because the Bruins once again hammered the Blues and sent the series back to Boston for a Game 7, where the Blues won and hoisted their first ever Stanley Cup. And then you look at the 2016, well, you could just look at the 2016 playoffs, actually. World Series, Cubs come back from a 3-1 deficit to win the World Series. Game 7 was in Cleveland, although I have to give Mother Nature major credit, because if that rain delay doesn't happen in the top of the 10th inning, I don't think the Cubs would have been celebrating in the middle of Progressive Field as World Series champions. I think the Cleveland Indians would have been celebrating as World Series champions. Think about this. The Cavaliers, they came back from a 3-1 deficit, and where did they win the NBA championship? At Golden State. The Pittsburgh Penguins, the only team who did not blow a lead in the championship round of 2016. Because think about this. The Falcons blew a lead in 2016. The Indians blew a lead in 2016. And the Warriors blew a lead in 2016. But the Penguins did not. But they had an opportunity to close out the San Jose Sharks in Game 5 and hoist the Stanley Cup in Pittsburgh for the first time ever, because their previous 3 Stanley Cups were won in 1991 at Minnesota. They were called the North Stars at the time. In 1992 at the Chicago Blackhawks, and 2009 at Detroit. But Martin Jones pretty much did a handstand, the Sharks goaltender, and the Sharks would go on to win Game 5 in Pittsburgh 4-2. So that sent the series back to San Jose. And you thought, oh no, another team's going to blow a 3-1 series lead. But the Penguins would go on to win. So they hoisted the Stanley Cup on the road. So again, that leads me to my question. If you're the team leading the series and you have the opportunity to close it out and eliminate the other team, whether it's to move on to the Western Conference Finals or move on to the second round or potentially win a championship, whether that's the World Series, NBA Finals, or Stanley Cup, would you prefer to win the championship or win the series, whichever you prefer for this hypothetical, at home or on the road. Because if you're at home, all the pressure is on you to close it out. Whereas if you're on the road trying to close out the series, then the pressure is on the home team to try and force a game 6 or a game 7 or maybe even a game 5. Whatever. So, these are the type of things I like to think about. I shouldn't say I don't like to. I like to discuss the primary things that most sports fans think about and discuss. But in addition, I like to think about these obscure topics like what I've been talking about, like crowd noise and closing out series. These are the types of obscure topics that not every fan is necessarily going to think about or discuss. So I feel like I'm filling that niche with my YouTube channel and being live on Facebook right now. Shout out to everyone who's watching. I don't know why, I just wanted to throw up peace signs. I think they're cool. Peace to everyone. Hope you all are staying safe. But there's one more obscure topic I want to discuss, and it kind of relates back to atmospherics like what I was discussing before. When you're at an NFL game, no matter what, when it gets to be third down, the PA announcer always tries to hype up the crowd by going, "It's third down!" And the crowd gets really into it, and they're making a lot of noise and all this and that. Do you think that the opponent actually gets affected by that? Or do you think something like that is just part of the culture of the game now? Because for me, I think it's more just a part of the culture. I don't think it really affects anybody unless you go to Kansas City or Seattle, because Kansas City and Seattle are kind of in a little bit of a rivalry, if you will. Now, I wouldn't say there's an actual rivalry between the Chiefs and Seahawks. But for a while, CenturyLink Field, home of the 12th man in Seattle, held the record for loudest outdoor stadium. But then Arrowhead Stadium came back and broke that record on Monday Night Football against the New England Patriots. I'm not going to call them their other name. Although, again, how many of their Super Bowls, I almost said World Series. No, that's the Red Sox. How many of the Super Bowls that the Patriots have won are legitimate? Come on, I can't be the only one that's questioning that. I can't be. I'm sure there are other fans out there questioning the legitimacy of some of the Patriots World Super Bowl championships. Come on. There's got to be fans out there. Anyway, so like I was saying before, when the PA announcer comes on and goes, "It's third down," and everybody's making noise and clapping their hands or waving their arms, whatever, in order to try and, get into the heads of the opponent or whatever, I don't think that really affects the opponent. I think, like I said, it's all part of the theatrics. Just like, when it's a full count in baseball and a pitcher's trying to get a strikeout and you see the crowd getting really loud and going, "Yay! Yay!" and trying to make all this noise. Again, I think that's just part of the theatrics. I don't know if the noise really affects the opposing pitcher. Now, I could be wrong, but in my personal opinion anyway, I don't think the crowd noise really affects players as much as people think it does. It's all part of theatrics. Like when I attend Cavaliers games, whether it's with my family or with my friends or my girlfriend, whatever, when the opposing team is shooting free throws, they'll put up like, the Michigan logo, which my sister will go crazy for because she went to the University of Michigan, and that creates an interesting dynamic in the family because my dad went to Ohio State. So you can assure there's some jabs being thrown, 1-2, especially during Ohio State Michigan week. Although I stay neutral because I'm a Penn State fan. Yeah. So I'm a Penn State fan first. Yeah. So I'm not afraid to admit that. Although we've struggled a little bit against Ohio State. But I will always hang on to 2016 when we blocked the field goal and returned it to the house and beat them. And we would go on to win the Big Ten East and then win the Big Ten championship. And Penn State almost came so close, to beating USC in the Rose Bowl. I love it. I love the Rose Bowl. It's one of my favorite football games. But yeah, and this brings me to my final topic, talking about college football. So LSU had a prolific offense last season with Joe Burrow, Steve at quarterback, Steve Ensminger, and Joe Brady as co-offensive coordinators. You had Justin Jefferson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and so many other players who were so important to that LSU offense. But, the draft just happened. And Joe Brady left LSU. He's now an offensive coordinator for the Carolina Panthers. Joe Burrow got drafted number 1 overall by the Cincinnati Bengals, or as I call them, the Cincinnati Bungles. Clyde Edwards-Helaire got drafted by the world champion Kansas City Chiefs, which with that addition, I don't know how anybody's going to stop the Chiefs offense now. Yeah. Justin Jefferson went to the Minnesota Vikings. So pretty much LSU lost all their weapons. So what's their offense going to look like? Were they a one-year wonder? Or can Ed Ogeron somehow, some way manufacture something to show that last season wasn't a fluke and that last season all the pieces just fell into the place at the right time? But the SEC is going to be difficult this season. You have LSU, although, again, we don't know if they were just a one-year wonder or if they're a team that's here to stay. You have that team from Tuscaloosa, which I choose not to say their name because I hate them with a burning passion. You have the Florida Gators. You have my favorite team in the SEC, the Auburn Tigers. War Eagle. Hey! Yeah, I would love to go to a game at Jordan-Hare Stadium, especially if it's the Iron Bowl. Oh my God. The Iron Bowl is the best rivalry in college football, but that's a different video for a different day. But I will fight you tooth and nail that the Iron Bowl is the best rivalry in all of college football, and I could present a pretty good argument, I think, as to why the Iron Bowl is maybe the best rivalry in all of college sports. The only rivalry I think that would come close to it in college sports would be Duke, North Carolina. Those are the two college rivalry games I would really love to go to. Duke, North Carolina, either at Duke or at North Carolina, preferably both. And then I would love to go to the Iron Bowl, but I would only go to Jordan-Hare Stadium. I would never want to go to Bryant-Denny Stadium because just because of how much I strongly dislike Alabama. Ooh, I need to wash my mouth out with soap after saying that team's name. I especially hate them because of a Crimson Tide fan named Harvey Updike, who got so upset about an Auburn fan doing something to one of the famous Alabama statues that he went and poisoned the trees at Toomer's Corners. So, for those of you who don't know, Toomer's Corner is a place on the campus of Auburn University, which is in Auburn, Alabama. And whenever Auburn does well in sports and they have a big win, you'll see fans just come out and throw toilet paper all over those trees. It's one of the coolest and wackiest traditions in all of college sports. I absolutely love it. I would love to go down there and partake in it. Honestly, I just want to go down to Auburn, go to a Tigers game, preferably against Georgia or the Iron Bowl, or just go to a Auburn game against a no-name opponent and watch the Tigers just roll, although the no-name opponent could spring a surprise. You don't know. And then I want to go over to Toomer's Corner and just throw toilet paper over those trees just to partake in that tradition. Unfortunately, Harvey Updike used some type of poisoning. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. And unfortunately, I don't think those trees are going to survive. So hopefully he gets brought to justice for it. So that's going to do it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, punch that like button like a UFC fighter and punch that subscribe button. Until next time, this is UngarToTheMax signing off with a salute to you.